In a region scraped flat by the slow advance of glaciers, there is a place that never was leveled beneath that ancient ice. Beyond the pasture land and the vast cornfields, the earth remains as furrowed and as folded as it ever was. Here you will find cliffs and canyons, sandstone arches and limpid streams, hills receding into the mist of what was once a primordial sea, spires and obelisks and ferric whorls like the fingerprints of a petrified giant. This was the setting for my journey through southern Illinois, from Lusk Creek to the Garden of the Gods. And after nearly a dozen solo trips, I was joined this time by a fellow adventurer. Today, with me, I have Samuel.
Hello.
From Bluegrass, Backcountry, and Music.
Yes, sir.
You should check out his channel. He's got a lot of great videos. He did the Sheltoe Trace earlier this year, and he makes music too. So go check it out.
Yeah, excited for this trip.
Me too. Let's get on the trail. Our hike began at the Lusk Creek Trailhead. Over the next 3 days, we would be hiking 35 miles through the Shawnee National Forest, using mostly the river-to-river trail. The first day would take us east through the canyon, and we would camp at the edge of the Lusk Creek wilderness. On day 2, we would venture into the One Horse Gap area, then travel north through the town of Harrod. In the Garden of the Gods wilderness, we would find a place to camp for our second night. On the third and final day, we would explore the Garden of the Gods before returning to my car at the end of our point-to-point route. It was an ideal morning for backpacking, bright and clear and smelling of pine. Ideal, except that I had forgotten my trekking poles. Fortunately, Samuel carries an extra walking stick in his truck. It wouldn't be the last time that I was grateful for his company. At the edge of the wilderness, we spotted signs of the area's previous inhabitants. Old roads, a well full of black water, the rusting wheels of a hay rake. Those soon gave way to natural wonders, Christmas ferns etched with frost, the snowy blooms of ice flowers, more ephemeral than any spring wildflower. Cliffs arrayed with the icy fangs of winter, whose dripping became tributary to the partly frozen creeks of Lusk Canyon. We soon found ourselves fording one of those creeks in order to see the natural bridge marked on our maps. The water was cold enough to burn. How's that feel?
Taking my breath away.
Yep. On the other side, we walked barefoot over the frosty leaves and crouched beneath the span of the bridge. We spent a good portion of the morning exploring the canyon.
The ground is warmer in here. Feels good on my feet.
Oh, I think the water's warmer here. Oh, that feels great.
The day warmed pleasantly as we climbed above the cane brakes and the ribbon of the creek. Once we passed beyond the canyon, the walking was easy, the trail well marked, except in one place where we took a wrong turn and had to backtrack. For most of the day, we passed through open hardwood forests punctuated with stands of pine, and we talked about gear and past adventures and the books we like to read. The sun never climbed very high before it began sinking again. The boulders and dry grasses and running creeks seemed to glow from within after being touched by the celestial light. In the last hour before dark, we found a place to camp above Little Lusk Creek. It wasn't much to look at, but it had everything we needed. Flat ground, a trickle of water, and plenty of firewood.
I think it's flat. Does it look flat?
Oh yeah.
I don't know why. I guess.
The fire transformed the place into home for the night.
It's got like a dehydrated vegetable packed in it.
Fancy ramen.
Man,
That leaves?
yeah. It's pretty impressive. Got water into the pouch with the gallon Ziploc bag, and I poured boiling hot water all over my thumb. It's smelled up like twice the size.
We sat talking by the fire for several hours, until the ice crystals on our tents glittered like the cold stars above, and it was time to turn in for the night. I slept unusually well and woke up feeling enthusiastic about the day ahead. I filtered water in the dark, and then we warmed up our breakfasts as a pink glow seeped into the eastern sky. We broke camp in silence. There was no time to waste if we wanted to make up lost ground and reach our destination by dusk. I shook the ice out of my rainfly, and we were on the trail as the forest began to echo with the first gunshots of shotgun season. The early miles passed like a morning dream. Soon we emerged from the woods on a gravel road near Bethesda Church. We took a moment to visit the churchyard. Then we began our first road walk of the day. As soon as we set out, we made an interesting discovery.
Dollar Americanus. Wild.
A closer look of that.
It's
A rare sight on the trail.
a bit peak foliage.
And farther down the road, we found out who might have been responsible for that little bit of trail magic. At One Horse Gap, we stepped out upon the exposed rock and saw that the landscape had changed. We sat near a fissure in the cliffs and ate a small lunch. But the cold caught up to us, and we heard the sound of sleet in the leaf litter. We didn't stay for long. Soon we squeezed through the crevice known as One Horse Gap, and we regained the river-to-river trail below the cliff line. The sight of the cliffs delighted us for miles. The shifting colors, the dripping overhangs, the pockmarks, the strata, and the swirls. And there was a place called Rocky Top, where we stood at the edge of a cliff and cast our eyes over the long miles until they blurred into the glow of the noontide horizon. Eventually, we came to the edge of a creek and heard cars passing beyond it. It was the last water we would see all day, so we filtered several liters and then crossed using a downed tree. On the other side was our long road walk.
This one looks a little less exciting than the last one. We might have some exciting traffic encounters, though.
On the road, we passed old barns and a few houses, and then the trees thinned and we saw the town of Harrod across a field. The town is little more than a church and a post office and a few homes with smoking chimneys. A half-mile beyond, we left the road and entered the Garden of the Gods wilderness. At that point, the bulk of the miles were behind us, but the hardest climb of the day was still ahead. The strange, segmented cliffs still towered over us, and we needed to get on top of them. Once we did, the trail flattened and delivered us onto a sandy spot with a panoramic view of the eastern hills. It was among the best campsites either of us had ever called home for a night.
Another layer.
Daylight soon began to fail. Lights came on below. A white church steeple was swallowed up by the night. Samuel started a fire, for which I was grateful, for I had grown sore after my longest ever day of backpacking. I didn't move much for the rest of the night. I just sat on the ground, soaking up the warmth of the fire, eating my dinner, drinking bourbon, and talking for several hours.
Some nice coals in there already.
Heck yeah.
Life has rarely been better.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers.
Bourbon and a fire.
Yeah, that hits the spot.
That'll warm you up.
If such a thing is possible, I might love morning fires even more than evening fires. The warmth chases away the nighttime ache in my bones, and in the pre-dawn gloom, the glow is like a vision of a forgotten age of man. We packed our things early and then stayed a while by the fire waiting for a sunrise that never came. But that hardly mattered. The fire and the coffee and the conversation mattered.
Yeah. None of the titanium stuff doesn't really either. My coffee recommended already. So I've wondered.
It was hard to leave that place, and we stayed longer than we had planned. That's the downside to an excellent campsite.
Ready?
The mileage was lower this day, the terrain more rugged. We spent the morning hiking in and out of hollows. we entered H Rock Canyon, named after an H-shaped arch high on a sandstone wall. We crossed the creek many times, looking down at the little gurgling cascades and groups of minnows darting to and fro. Overhead, geese passed in a hieroglyphic pattern, as if they were trying to communicate in some avian language. At the place called Noah's Ark, we stood on the exposed rock and gazed over the treetops as vultures wheeled over the void.
It's a really cool rock.
I suppose it's called Noah's Ark because a whole menagerie can be spotted in the rocks. I saw a turtle and a whale at the very least. And there were rocks shaped like anvils, rocks fruiting like mushrooms, rocks speckled with multicolored lichen. Finally, we entered the Garden of the Gods. We scrambled over the rocks and stood against the bitter wind for a survey of southern Illinois. It was all the reward we needed for our efforts. And then it was time to go. The day was growing old, and all good things must end. Another half-mile of walking, and we reached my car.
Well, we did it. Couldn't have done it without you, Samuel.
Nux.
Thank you so much. No, definitely was a much more enjoyable trip with you along. Yeah, it's a great trip. What was your favorite part?
You know, I think that campsite from last night was
Yeah,
a lifetime type of experience to be up there during the night with the fire, and yeah, it was all great. But
yeah,
that one's gonna go down in the memory books for sure.
yeah. That campsite, hard to beat.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to beat that moment, especially getting there after that long day yesterday.
Oh yeah, 17 miles. Record.
Record for me, yeah. That yesterday was my longest day ever backpacking. Somewhere close to 17 miles. We're actually not sure. I think the official mileage will forever remain unknown on this trip, but we'll try to work it out later.
It's a beautiful mystery.
Yes it is. We'll remain that way forever. Okay, now all we have to do is drive back to the other end of the trailhead again, and that's it. Well, let's get going. Behind the scenes Bluegrass backcountry footage.
Laying out for the shot.
Exclusive look. Edit out all the weird stuff later. Welcome back, and thanks for I don't know what I'm doing.
Are you still rolling?
I guess. I didn't think I was, but it appears that I am. I got a blooper.
Yeah, maybe.
What's it look like? Look good. Oh, no. How are you folks today?
Very fine. And you?
Doing
Looks
great.
like you're going on a good adventure.
What's that?
Did you fix it in the middle of the night?
No, but I fixed it as soon as I got up.
So I didn't forget.